So I have 30 minutes in rapid fire to try and tell you a story that's really spanned 10 years. And this may either be a really good story that you pick up some nuggets and you take home with, or you might say, well, gosh, I know all this, and all you've told me is really how hard some of this process can be. I hope that I will give you some of the pearls that we learned along the way that you can apply. I don't think anybody is here today because they need to know all this great stuff. You all are doing great stuff, right? You want to pick up a pearl. You want to learn how to tweak something. Maybe you're still struggling with the same problem you've always struggled with. So hopefully today's session will share some of that with you. These were the objectives that Sherry and team provided. So I'm really here to tell our story, but I'd like you to think about it in terms of these three things. What kind of infrastructure do you have to really support the change management and the project management that go hand in hand? What tools and resources do you have, and how do you use data in a variety of ways? And I will share a few of those. I've added a couple slides to give you ideas of how you can use data to manage changes in behavior. I assume everybody knows who HCA is, although occasionally I'll be in a spot and I'll say, who do you work for? I work for HCA. Well, who's that? So I thought I would just give you sort of an introduction to who we are. We started as a one hospital system in 1968. It was based in Nashville. It still is. We operate in 20 states, and we have an international division that operates predominantly in England. We have 163 hospitals, 187 EDs, 24 of those are freestanding or provider-based. And we saw about roughly 6.3 million visits last year. So we are a great litmus test because we are you. We are critical access. We have large academic centers. We have inner city facilities. Bread and butter of our emergency departments are typically community-based EDs that roughly see, although that number's going up, 45 to 55 now, and more going into upper bands. This is the quote that changed my life. I took my role in 2002, and in 2003, a lot was being put out there. The advisory board had put out the Clockwork ED. Many of you might remember that. And it was, at the time, the COO, now Richard Bracken, is our president and CEO, and he said, hey, Suzanne, how long do our patients wait? He had no idea how that question would really sort of change our life, mine personally, in sort of the direction we took, and as a company generally. But that was really the critical question, and we could have said, well, I assume he meant the waiting room. But when we began to dig into wait, we really began to have to dissect and understand all of patient flow and throughput, and where our opportunities were. This is really what I sort of looked out at every day for a number of years. Nashville's called the Athens of the South because in the 1800s it had one of the first school systems in the Southeast, and it had a number of higher education learning centers. And I thought it was almost serendipitous that the Greeks are really charged with being the measurement. That's where the origins of our measurement came from. So, maybe I got inspiration from looking at that. As Sherry said, I changed my role a couple years ago because when I wasn't looking at a plane, which is mostly what I was doing out the window, I wanted to not be as traveling as much. So I've changed my landscape, and I'm now with a division of HCA, which is called the Health One or Continental Division. It's based out of Denver, and we have about 12 hospitals that are in that division. So I sort of started my role in this way, and I'm very curious, how many of you are responsible for more than one emergency department? Okay, a handful. So it's really when you're looking at 187 EDs and trying to make change, you sort of cast a wide net. And sometimes you catch fish and sometimes you get hubcaps, right? But this was a bit of how we did some of our early changes. I sort of think this is how I fish now. Maybe you fish like the guy on the left-hand side of your screen, but I have still a lot of poles in the water. But trying to make change is still all about how do you adopt those tools and resources and infrastructure to make that. Regardless of how you fish, we're all trying to catch this, right? It's the quality catch. And it is made up of a number of dimensions. If we look at the IOM's dimensions of quality, we have really been the shepherds of the efficiency, of the timeliness, more recently focused on patient-centeredness because of patient satisfaction, some in the safe because of our environment, falls, suicide, medication safety, a variety of things. But most of the early learnings in terms of efficiency are still coming out of the ED. And the ED is so much a system within a system. So we have really begun, through our measurement work, begun to shape measurement throughout the hospital. Excuse me, I have a cough. So why have we been so efficiency focused? I think it's because it's been under our control to some extent. We know how wait times, especially in the early, work that came out of ED wait time, patient satisfaction was critical. Why do people leave? They didn't want to wait so long. We knew it contributed to cost when we had walkaways. And we had some direct or indirect picture of utilization by how long people were in our EDs. We also had terrible things that happened in our EDs. People died in our waiting rooms. Once upon a time, maybe they still do in some EDs. So the whole risk issue became paramount for many of us. And then crowding really came out of the whole plumbing system. So when the back door got backed up, went all the way through to the front door. So if we know that it's all about, at least to start with, efficiency, we know the metrics we should be measuring, we've got some experience, why has this change process been so difficult? Because it is not easy. And I've interacted with a couple of you as you came by our poster, and we're still talking about some of the same problems we've been talking about for 10 years. And I think it's difficult because we have multiple stakeholders. We have wide process variation. We have laborious data collection, although that's getting easier now with technology on board. But sometimes we don't get all the data elements we want. We say, I tell you what, let's collect that manually. Doesn't work. Can't sustain the amount of data you need to really help make some of that change. We don't have a good universal repository, although I think in our future we're going to need one. And maybe it's going to be our benchmarking alliance where that data will all go into and help us look at each other in a blinded way. And we have the need for analytics. Lots of people who do great day-to-day work don't know how to analyze the information that's coming out of our systems or out of a third-party system. And I think there are new skills that are required in change management. I mean, I didn't go to school to become a change agent, right? How many did? Was that in your curriculum anywhere? It wasn't, but we do it every day. And how do we do that effectively? So my sort of culling this down is that I think these are the things you've got to have to make effective, long-term, sustaining change. You've got to have leadership. You've got to do the right assessment. You have to have a plan. You have to have the right tools in terms of project management, either leadership tools, toolkits, some people don't like that word, playbooks, whatever. You have to have measurement that really measures what it is you're trying to change. You have to evaluate it. We always skip this. We think, oh, I got it, done, now on to the next thing because my turkey platter's running over. But we have to evaluate, and then we have to drive those expectations and continue to do that and keep an eye on it. So I always start with this, and if you've heard me speak, you've heard me say it's all about leadership, and I really, really believe that. It's about leadership at a variety of levels and in a variety of situations. And what does that mean? What does leadership mean? Jim this morning was nice enough to say, oh, Suzanne really helped change HCA. Well, me and what, 10,000 other people in my back pocket? I mean, I could not have led that individually. It takes leadership at all levels, and it takes leadership at sometimes in positions of power that can make things happen for you, whether that's find the money, find the resources, break down the barriers, tell people they're going to play nice in the sandbox with one another, and they're going to have to figure this out. And sometimes they have to make tough decisions, something versus something else. And they have to set those expectations and that timeline. This was my escalation plan. It was a pretty good one, I thought. I'm where the gold dot is. Okay, so when I did not get what I needed at a local facility, I had a group president that was responsible for half of the company because he was deemed the champion by the president and CEO. And if that didn't work, I was at Monday morning meeting with all of the senior executives and the leader of our company that said, this is what we need to have happen. Now that gets pretty powerful. That gives you a lot of oomph to get something done. It was also an opportunity to share some good things that happened and things where we were not doing as well. And we could share it in the scope of plans, actions, resources. Now, I saw earlier somebody said, do you use Lean, do you use Six Sigma, do you use PDC? I really don't care what quality framework you use. They are fundamentally similar in terms of what they're aspiring to do. So it doesn't matter. We didn't go out and say, all of HCA, you have to come to one quality framework. We don't say that. We have some that do Six Sigma, we have some that do Lean, we have some that have sort of modified of those and do their own quality framework. But it is still fundamentally the same from hospital to hospital. This is the tough stuff, change management, right? This is where you have to engage people and you have to transition them. You heard this morning about teamwork. Cannot do this in a silo. If I have an ED medical director that wants to make change, if your nursing and your tech folks aren't on board with you, you are gonna have a tough go, and vice versa, right? And depending on what the change is, it might be you need to reach outside of your area. That might be lab or imaging or the nursing floors. So it's all part of that continuum. So it's really about getting the individuals, the teams, the right leadership from your organization to help you take your current state to a desired or future state. And when we talk about people and we talk about shaping culture, what do they say? 3 to 5 years, right? So we've been at it 10, and we still struggle, but we chip away at it, and it is part of making those cultural changes and the expectations. I looked at my data for January across the company just to try and sort of say, has that really made a difference? Have we really changed anything? We had about year over year January. This is a pretty big January for all of us in the ED. I know my division had a 36% growth, okay? And we still had a 1% walkaway rate, okay? Usually we're running under 1% pretty consistently, but boy, that really hit us with the EMS traffic and the volume. So it's really about a culture that now is focused on those metrics every day in every way. And it doesn't matter that we're going to get 36% more volume this month. We've got to be able to accommodate that. It's also about project management. And I tell you, here's another one. I didn't go to school to be a project manager. I didn't even know what project management was until I had to start making big project changes. And that's when I was really introduced to it. And I went, oh my God, this is like nirvana. I finally have the secret to the kingdom. And it was really in sort of having expertise in project management. How many of you have a lean coach, a project manager, a management engineer that will work with you? How many? Lots? Well, maybe about half. Okay? So these folks, this is what they do. Some of us have great vision. We know what needs to happen. We can get the team together. We can use our lean events to shape the future. But then the devil's always in the details, and oftentimes we get lost in that. If we either don't have that skill set, and even if you have that skill set, do you have the time that it requires in that skill set to follow all those elements across time? So engaging those resources to help you is really important. And, they are a great third set of eyes because they don't have a dog in your hunt, right? They're not looking at it through your own lens. They have a whole neutral set of eyes, so when you want them to really see if something is sticking or where the problems are, they're a great tool to do that, and they have expertise in that area. How many of us mostly work sort of during the day? If I look at most ED directors, most ED managers, they work during the day. Not so true with the medical side, but mostly on the nurses. When do most of our patients come in? 3 to 3, right? Or 2 to 2, or 11 to 11. Are our leaders there at those hours? Do we know what happens on the various times of the day? We know the predictability of our volume. Are we ensuring that we're shaping change across the entire 24-hour period? Because the ED looks very different 2 o'clock in the afternoon than it does at 2 o'clock at night than it does on a Saturday or a Sunday, etc. My champion, my group president and CFO actually used this on a WebEx that they delivered to all the CEOs in the company. I could have kissed them for it because it was like, that's it. We get in the habit. Many of our leaders want to fix things. They want to get it off their list. Check, done, next, okay? I want to fix that ED. It's broken. It's not working right. Fix it. I can't fix it. We can't fix it. We have to manage it because tomorrow is going to look different than today. We may not know how that's going to look, but it's going to look different. So if we think that we can just fix it and be on to the next thing, we can't. We started our journey in 2003 with that quote. It took us 3 years to get consistent metrics. We had 5, right? Arrival, bed, greet, dispo, leave. We've evolved to many now with all layers of granularity, but we started with 5. And of course, our walkaway definitions, okay? And it took us 3 years to get that data for the entire company. We have been using that in a very robust way. And the other thing that's interesting and resonates with me on this slide is that we started by thinking our data is going to be a performance improvement tool. It's a quality tool. Well, what is it today, folks? It's an operational tool. And our operators at our facilities use that data also as a quality tool, but also as an operational tool. So we really have to focus on those metrics. I think oftentimes this is the enemy of project improvement. We sort of get a bunch of spaghetti and we throw it at the wall and we see what sticks. And we don't take a very planned approach, and we cannot fix everything. The ED's broken, fix it. Well, where shall we start? We have to start somewhere. We have to have a focused, planned, sequenced, and comprehensive approach to it. What's the adage? How to eat an elephant? One bite at a time. You have to do the same thing as you're trying to target your metrics, and you have to measure against that. You have to have the right stakeholders. And oh, by the way, the stakeholders for every single step of your process improvement might be different. Who are the stakeholders at the back door? Very different than they are at the front door. Okay? Who are they in the middle? Oh, there's lab and imaging, and hospitalists, and residents, and a variety of other compelling stakeholders. So you really have to focus that process improvement with your metrics and with the right stakeholders. I think I've already said this. This is where our lean coaches come in, our management engineers. They can really help you with their project management. So metrics are sort of the other item. We have to have the metrics, and you have to have them in a variety of ways. We created our own database. There just wasn't one out there. You know, some have come along subsequently. You know, if I had to do it all over again, would I make or would I buy? I don't know, but we made it from the ground up. We built it, we did the user requirements, we built the definitions. There was work out there being done that we leveraged and used. But we had to build that. We had to do that so that we would have a system that every night, 100% of our ED metrics are collected and uploaded. Right now, I can go to the database and I can leverage about 20 million ED visits. So that becomes very powerful. And not only do I have it, every ED doc has it. Every ED manager has that. Imaging has it, lab has it, bed managers have it. We have to give that data out. We need to make that data transparent in order to make change. It can't just come out as a report. It has to be there to use. We then took another leap of faith. We said, you know, the data's good, but you know, you can't run all the reports you want. People are solving different problems, so they want to mix and match different data points. Let's give them access to the SQL server so they can actually script the reports that they need. So it is an evolution, and while some of us can do that or can't do that, there are people who can. We then realized that just giving them data every day wasn't enough because people forgot about it and they lost track of it and they didn't have time to go look at it. And what is that data going to tell me today? Well, I really only need to look at that quarterly or monthly for my operation review or whatever. So we then began to push data. And this data gets pushed every single day. Yes, it goes to the ED directors and providers, and some of them like it and most of them don't. But it goes to the CEO's printer, goes to the CFO's printer, goes to the CNO's printer every day. They don't even have to say print. It spools to their printer. It is sitting there. It has become the famous red box report, okay? And we have group presidents and division presidents that if you have too much red along a line, guess what? Your phone CEO is going to ring. That's what I mean when I say leadership. It's really somebody who's watching and staying intimately focused with what we're trying to shape as change. That takes a lot of discipline. It takes a lot of time. And I think that's really what helped get some momentum. And then, you know, we started with, you know, if you look at that, we started with a variety of metrics. That's now an 8.5 by 14 spreadsheet. But we then cut our teeth with imaging metrics and lab metrics. We also have physician metrics. We have nurse metrics. So we're beginning to push information out that help someone look at that and begin to drill down and say, where do I have that problem? You might need that much information in order to make those changes. We email and text. We look at front door times. So every 30 minutes, I will tell you, I can set my clock by my phone because I get lots of things that hit my phone. We also have the infamous widget. I didn't really know what a widget was. I thought it was a make-believe thing, but it's really a widget, and it lives on our computer screens. And if I'm a nurse and I'm going to chart, I have a widget in the bottom that will tell me what my wait times are. Now, what my score is for surge, for divert, so that I can begin to feel, wow, is that escalation of patients going to lead me to divert? Do I need to be thinking about how to mitigate that? So widgets are a cool technology. We have also apps and bookmarks and things like that. We've now taken where we're posting that information in our departments as well, in the lounges, so that there is transparency in the metrics with the staff. If they're engaged as stakeholders, they really need to know what we're chasing after. And that needs to be part of what we share with them. In terms of evaluation and expectations, you know, it's the old trust but verify, right? We inspect what we expect, and it has to start at the top, and it has to truly filter down. And quite honestly, you know, now I have 12 fishing poles in the lake, but I spend a lot of my time doing this. I'm sort of the infamous secret shopper, although I'm not so secret anymore. They know me. But, you know, it's surprising. You put on a pair of scrubs, and in about 10 minutes, they don't see you anymore. And so you actually can spend a lot of time observing from a different lens what's going on. Are these changes really being hardwired? I'm not sure we do such a good job of keeping focus with undue burden. You could argue all of those reports that we push out to people feel somewhat burdensome. But we have had to have that level of detail to make the kinds of changes we've made. We have to get our staff into owning the process. They have to own that change. We cannot, I mean, how many of you are still struggling with immediate bedding? And I mean really immediate bedding, not make-believe immediate bedding. You know, the immediate bedding where you walk in, we put the patient in the system, they go right to a bed. How many of you are doing that? Raise your hand high, okay? Struggling, you're still struggling with it. Oh, struggling, oh, more, okay. Yeah. Who does not want that change to be made? I'm sorry to say this, folks. Mostly the nursing staff. You know? They just don't want it, they don't get it, and it takes a long time to get them to understand. I feel like, oh my God, my job is so worth it when I have a nurse that's a naysayer that comes up and go, I got it, I finally got it. I know why we're doing this, okay? It's like the best day of your life. But it takes a long time. It's funny, we did immediate bedding for all of HCA, and then I took this new role and I went out expecting to see immediate bedding in all my hospitals. Guess what? None, not there, not one. Not one, they all said they did it. But we weren't inspecting that, right? We were just saying, attest to it. Tell us you're doing it. We might get around and audit it, but if you really want to see if that kind of change is being done, you've got to be out there. I have this one nurse, she's always at triage. God love her, she probably hates me when she sees me. She goes, oh no, you again. You know, it's just like, oh, you're here to see if I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. And I go, yeah, but you're always doing such a good job. So it is about really getting the staff to understand what we're doing and then setting the expectations if they don't. This is a report we started as part of a sequence tiered process of change. It's about registration. Well, how important is registration? Well, in the waiting game, it was a lot. Doctor said, I can go. How come I'm still here? Well, I'm waiting for you to get registered. Oh, I have to send you to the front. Oh, registration has to come see you. Oh, all of a sudden, registration became very important as a metric for us. So registration had to get in the game. That was 2010 when we started that. I still get those every single month from every single one of the registration folks. And we focus on how long before you are fully registered, because we quick reg in the system, but not only that, we also focus on how many patients left the ED before they were fully registered. You know, I got all the paperwork, I wrote down on a paper towel or a piece of paper, and then later I put it in the system. Because we found that's not the best practice. Real-time, concurrent, that's what we needed to do. So we look at both of those. How do you keep your leadership engaged? They have a huge turkey platter. They're right now focused on a variety of things where the ED is there, but maybe not top of mind. You have to keep the leadership engaged. They have to remember that they really are the ones who are helping give you the clout and the support to make the ongoing changes. You're never fixed. You're just managing. So we have to give them sort of that upper level. We do it through milestone reports. We do it through executive summaries. You heard about sort of executive placeholders. I will tell you, I just started quarterly meetings with our physicians and our ED directors. Not new, except that we have the division president. Oh, except that the CEO, the CNO, the COO, and the CFO have to come. Oh, except guess what? They have to get ready before they come because they would never walk into that meeting not being fully prepared. So all of a sudden, the level of dialogue, FaceTime between the medical directors and their assistants and the CEOs and the senior executives has really gotten a lot of play. Okay? And it's not punitive. We don't come and go, why are you doing that? There might be some of that. The metrics stay red the whole time. But what we really talk about is what kind of barriers do we need to break down? What kinds of things are you seeing? How do we continue to grow? What kind of problems are you having? So it's become a very collaborative dialogue. And we always have a bigger list that we take away than we start with. So here's the moral of my story. I may not have told you anything new, except that organizational change, whether it's 180 facilities or one facility, is hard. It is really, really hard. It's the hard work that we do. And if you can get your team together, it makes it a whole lot better, because party of one cannot change anything. It takes a village to make the kind of changes. I love piloting and rapid cycle. I'm just enamored with that. I like to take a couple of my A-team, you know who they are, your A-team, who you can get them on the hook, you can bring them along, let's try it, give me feedback, because I have confidence in what those people will tell me. And then I can try it with the B-team, because they're going to tell me it's never going to work. But at least I will have some good information to start shaping how things have to evolve. And tweaking based on that feedback is absolutely necessary. You have to have accountability for change. People have to be on the bus or off the bus. And if you can have technology to support you, that's great. So it is all about leadership. We have to stay forever vigilant. We have to constantly watch those metrics. All the metrics that I showed you that we started in 2006, we look at every single day, and we still look at them. And I bet 10 years from now, I'll still be saying we're looking at those same things, and maybe more. So I think I'm out of time, but was there a quick question?